everyone. Welcome to our conversation today, Assistive Technology in Rural Settings, a scoping review of the literature. My name is Deborah Rooks-Ellis, and I'm an associate professor at Coastal Carolina University, specializing in early childhood and early childhood special education.
And I'm Joanna Ryan. I'm an assistant professor at the University of North Dakota, and I focus on applied behavior analysis and special education teacher preparation.
Our conversation today will focus on definitions of rural services, and assistive technology. We'll use our scoping review work to share the current landscape of assistive technology. We'll discuss key gaps and needs, highlight implications for educator preparation and practice, and provide some suggestions for future work and strategies that you can walk away with today. We anchor our conversation in our scoping review study. We published in the Journal of Special Education Technology in late 2024, and we're excited to share this work today. Let's talk a little bit about how we define rural. This will provide the foundation for our conversation and help provide meaning to what it is that we are looking at within our scoping review. Research says that rural communities are often located in areas characterized by geographic isolation. Rural communities may be small in population size and include high-need schools. They may also experience higher rates of poverty and more limited access to resources such as healthcare and mental health needs. Rural communities can often lack access to high-speed internet services, and families within rural communities may have less access to internet sources. But that's not always the case. We want to share with you today a couple of different resources so that you can explore the rural definition a little bit deeper. We know that rural communities are diverse in many different ways. This Why Rural Matters 2025 edition by Showalter et al. And published by the National Rural Education Association emphasizes why rurality matters and why we need to address these issues and concerns and have these conversations within our educator preparation programs. Another resource that we want to share with you is from the National Center for Education Statistics. Use the locale lookup map to learn more about the specific schools within your area and to help support your pre-service students to understand the demographics of those schools and the support needs of those schools.
Thanks, Deb. And in addition to defining rurality, another piece of the context for the study the scoping review that we did is assistive technology and what that definition was that we operated from. So we did use the federal definition from IDEA 2004 as we were doing our work. And in January 2024, the U.S. Department of Education Office of Special Education Programs did put out some really helpful documents, including a Dear Colleague letter and a myths and facts document that we'll talk about in just a minute. And a couple of terms that they defined in these documents were assistive technology, devices. And I'm not going to go ahead and just screen read through this here, but if you want to pause and take a look at what this says, do that at this time. And another definition they provided was assistive technology services and what exactly federal law means by this. So we will talk about AT devices and services throughout our presentation now, and this is a good sort of pause place to orient to those terms. One thing that I am going to dig into a little bit that was provided by OSEP were some types of assistive technology devices, and they explained these devices as low tech, mid tech, and high tech. So I'm going to do a little bit of a read through here just so we have that information moving forward. So low-tech devices are AT devices that are readily available, inexpensive, typically don't require batteries or electricity. And some examples of these are pencil grips, page holders, or modified scissors. Mid-tech devices are usually digital, and they might require batteries or another power source. And so examples of these are calculators, audiobooks, and digital recorders. And then high-tech devices are typically computer-based, have sophisticated features, and can be tailored to the specific needs of an individual student. And examples of these are tablets, screen readers, and voice recognition software. So to learn more, hop out of here perhaps and head to this Dear Colleague letter that was promoted by OSEP, and then also their myths and facts document. And at the end of this presentation, there will be some ways to link out. There may be an attachment to this presentation that provides links that you can follow along the way. And back to Deb to talk a bit about the current landscape of assistive technology.
Thanks, Joanna. As we think about, again, our anchor to our conversation today and the scoping review work that we participated in, we had these questions. How have mid and high-tech assistive technology devices been used to support educational interventions for students with disabilities, specifically in rural public schools? How have researchers classified, described, and discussed the rural settings in studies related to this topic? And who exactly were the students and interveners in the studied interventions? And where did those interventions take place? We ask these questions specifically because rural setting variables may affect the use of AT in our rural schools. We also wanted to determine how and when should we use those mid and high-tech assistive technologies, and what can we do to make sure that assistive technology effectively supports educational interventions in rural schools. We narrowed this down to 22 studies that met the inclusion criteria. Our inclusion criteria included that the study must be conducted in a public school within the United States. The authors had to indicate that the setting was rural. Participants were students with a disability. The study examined educational interventions that were supported with the use of mid to high-tech assistive technology, and the study used an experimental design. We coded articles and extracted the following types of information: the type of assistive technology device that was used, the dependent variable that was outlined by the researchers, the instructional procedures also outlined within the article, participant characteristics, intervener characteristics, and most importantly, we were interested in how the authors or the researchers classified, described, and discussed the rural setting. And what did we learn? We found that out of the 22 studies, 18 did not discuss rurality in the introduction, the research question, or within the discussion sections. Authors usually used a brief one-time mention of the setting, such as rural town, rural school, or more rural community. Now, of course, we understand that the purpose of these studies was not necessarily to examine the influence of the setting on the outcome of the intervention. The rural setting was not the important thing, but information of the efficacy of the intervention was important. We also learned that there's not a lot of information about rural setting variables that influence the outcomes of interventions supported by the use of assistive technology. We also learned there's not a lot of information about barriers and supports for the use of assistive technology in rural schools. But all is not lost. We know that there are a lot of resources and materials and practical strategies that we can help our pre-service educators know and understand and use. And we'll talk about those implications and some of those strategies as we continue our conversation. Joanna.
Thanks, Deb. So let's get into talking about some needs and key gaps in this area. And this can be looked at through the lens of barriers to the use of AT in rural schools. AT devices can be expensive, and consulting to provide services in this area can also be expensive. There's a digital divide that can be present in some rural settings. So sometimes rural schools or communities don't have robust access to high-speed internet access and may have less reliable internet services. Schools may have internet service that has a lower bandwidth, and there may be fewer homes in the area that have access to high-speed internet that is necessary for the use of some AT devices. In addition to some of these technology barriers, there are other barriers that might impact the way that AT devices and services are used in rural schools. So we know that there are special education teacher shortages. We know that there might be limited access to professional development opportunities and specialized support personnel. So it could be that a rural or remote, smaller rural or remote school doesn't have access to this layer of support staff that could be in a larger urban or suburban district. We know that there's increasing social and economic diversity in rural communities. And we know that families and caregivers are often limited in the way that they have access to specialized personnel, to school personnel, and training to use devices at home. So it could be that there's an interruption between the way devices and services are accessed at school and then at home. So we know we need some more information, more research information about how to use mid and high-tech AT to support students in real life rural contexts. So we need this research information to inform policy and to inform the way that practices are used in rural schools and communities. Back to Deb with some implications from our scoping review.
Thanks, Joanna. We want to bring your attention now to this Why Rural Matters 2023 publication that emphasized the importance of policy and policymakers better understanding the issues of rurality and how it may impact rural schools and rural communities. We want to think about how in our educator preparation programs, we can prepare our students to not only work in rural settings and be prepared to implement practices that will support our students, but also to advocate for funding and for resources that will support the communities and the schools and to help provide the services that are necessary. And we do that by reminding our policymakers of the importance of our need and our services and of our rural students and their families that support them. There are many, many strengths of rural schools and rural communities, and we want to highlight a few of those here as we continue this conversation. Students in rural districts are more likely to graduate high school than their counterparts in non-rural districts. Those smaller settings often mean that there are greater personal attention to students and that we can provide safe environments. Rural communities provide a sense of community, and we understand that these strengths of rural schools can also help us as we prepare our pre-service students to serve in these rural districts. So
All
let's
right.
talk about next steps in educator preparation and practice. Joanna?
All right. And this is what we're really excited to talk with you about today. And so I'm hopeful that Deb and I will be able to sort of bounce back and forth as we talk through these next steps. So even though we don't have a lot of wonderful information that is sort of really directly relevant and speaking to the use of AT devices and services in rural schools at this point in time, We do have some general great ways of supporting our pre-service teachers and professional development for teachers that we can plug in at this time. So embedding assistive technology discussions and instruction into the core curriculum is one great way to do that. So assistive technology doesn't have to be a completely separate topic. So it can be brought into instruction that for general education teachers, special education teachers, technology courses, and really focusing in on digital accessibility and literacy and universal design for learning.
And these are strategies that Joanna and I have used within our own educator preparation programs. And I think probably we would both agree that the one that we like most is the ability to provide that hands-on experience and modeling for our students, bringing in the materials and the tools and the resources where students can actually get their hands dirty and play with the materials and access the tools and resources and try these materials out before they would be expected to implement them, either in their field experience, in their internship, or in their future classrooms. So providing that hands-on and that experiential learning is really a solid strategy to helping understand the use of assistive technology and the way it works.
And teaching data-driven decision making and embedding this throughout all of pre-service educators' learning experiences can be helpful as well to help to support that individualized approach to serving students through educational services.
We also want to help our pre-service educators develop practical skills, go beyond that theory, really teach them how to adapt materials, how to think about the assignments and integrate assistive technology seamlessly into our everyday lessons and our unit plans.
And collaboration is so important when we're talking about promoting students' use of assistive technology across all of the settings in which they live their lives in their rural communities. So preparing our pre-service educators to work with a variety of constituents in this situation. So AT specialists, speech language pathologists, parents, the students themselves, serving as a team to promote the use of AT devices and promote AT services across the settings in which students live their lives.
And maybe most importantly, we want to normalize assistive technology for everyone. We want to teach our pre-service teachers that it is okay and it becomes a part of their natural instruction. We want to help them understand that assistive technology can benefit their students. And when we use it every day and we become used to it by providing that hands-on instruction, by providing modeling within our pre-service classrooms, it will become a part of their language and their ability to adapt and to provide these services for all of their students. We have two resources that we would like to share with you today. The first is the National Assistive Technology Act Technical Assistance and Training Center, also known as AT3 Center. The AT3 Center is supported with funding from the Administration for Community Living and the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services. It was designed to increase access to and acquisition of assistive technologies by individuals across the lifespan.
And a second resource or a second starting place that we'd like to share is from the Center on Inclusive Technology and Education Systems, or CITES, which is funded by IDEA. And CITES supports school districts and other LEAs in creating and sustaining inclusive technology systems to serve all students, including students with disabilities who need AT services and accessible educational materials. This resource also provides resources for families and could be a great starting point for looking at ways to start embedding AT instruction within your educator preparation program. So in summary, we need more research in this area, but all is not lost. For now, there are good instructional and support strategies that we have for our pre-service educator programs. And there are some concrete resources you can access at this point in time to think about and get started with some of this information.
So we thank you for joining us in this conversation today. We invite you to reach out, share your stories, share your questions, engage with us in more research in the future. And we hope that you have enjoyed this information and use these resources to help support your own pre-service teachers or within your own practice. Thank
Thank you
you.
so much.